What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Cornerstone Worship Podcast. I am your host, Jithin, and along with me is our co-host for the podcast, Thalia. Thalia, thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Always glad to be here.
I appreciate it. Well, in today's episode, we are talking about an important, not issue, but important factor that happens with worship teams, which is introducing a new song.
Yes.
You want to always have a good strategy when you're trying to introduce a new song, because you don't want to lose the congregation when you're incorporating new ideas and new thoughts, and change is always difficult. And so in our experience, we wanted to show you or talk about some things that we've experienced and tips that we've learned
Definitely.
going through that.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start, Talia, with this question is, why do you think it is so hard to introduce a new song into a congregation?
Well, I think a big part of it is like change. Being consistent is important. So like when we do introduce a song, that we want to definitely engage in that consistency. But I think it's also when you're worshiping, you want to be able to engage the song, and not knowing what the song is hard for that. So like you said, like the strategy was like do's and don'ts that we've learned along the way. So I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of other leaders as far as how they want to introduce a new song, and making sure that the congregation is engaged in the introduction of that new song.
Yeah, just like you said, change is difficult for in any aspect, right? Whether not only just songs, but if you change the way the stage looks, or where the lights are on, or lights are off, or adding new technology, or adding more singers, less singers. Like, some people don't like to get rocked in or changed or moved in a different direction.
Right.
So I think when you are incorporating change in a worship atmosphere, trying to do it smoothly and strategically in a transitional way definitely helps.
100%. Yeah.
In making it smoother and just making sure that, again, like you said, that at the end of the day, the congregation is engaging and not watching, because the whole point as a worship team is that we want to be singing together and not be a performance, right?
Right.
So, one of the strategies that we've encountered that has seemed to be beneficial is adding that song to a playlist.
Yes.
In many churches, there's songs that are played, either before service and after service. And one strategy that we incorporated is, say, for instance, we had a praise song that we wanted to introduce. We had two playlists for Sunday service, which was like a pre-service playlist and
just like bumping praise music.
Exactly. So praise music, and those more up-tempo, mid-tempo songs that were new, we would add to that.
Yep.
And then after service, that post-worship where people are either congregating, talking, or making their way out of the church.
Usually after altar call too, right?
Yeah. We have this post-worship or post-service playlist where we introduce those new worship songs there, and it also gives us, as worship leaders, as we're on stage and looking around, it gives us an opportunity to engage, right, and see our if people are enjoying it, liking the music,
right? Yeah.
Maybe singing along with it as they're sitting, waiting for the service to start. We're like, okay, there's some people that are responding to the song. Maybe they possibly know it prior to us introducing it, and that helps
definitely
transition that song into it.
I think it's a little subconscious too, like, hey, I heard this song before, once we actually bring it forward to the church. So it's like, well, we kind of did that on purpose. So I feel like it's really helpful in that way as well.
Totally.
I think another good thing that we would try to do in introducing a new song is, before we brought it to the main service on Sundays, we would bring it in on Wednesdays. Wednesdays were a great opportunity to just try something different, but in a gentle way as well. So whether it be offering or an actual worship, mostly our worship songs we introduced on Wednesdays because it was the worship service. But if it wasn't a worship song, maybe on the Sunday we would do it as an offering song, just to see, again, like, test the waters with the song, see how the church responds to it. Also an opportunity to learn the song before we do it as an actual song on the set list. So it's just another way to teach the congregation in a way.
Yeah, and so I know that even just the modern church, they might be going away from like a traditional midweek service and things like that. But even if it's like a monthly prayer service or wherever, there is maybe a smaller group of congregants, it's just a good way to like maybe test the song out, see if it's good for the season that your church is in,
Right.
for the culture of your church, where the vision of your pastor and that leadership is trying to bring
Exactly.
that church in
That's a
that
good
moment.
point too. Is like, if you're coordinating with your pastor for the songs, then that's another reason to introduce a new worship song. Like there were times when one of our pastors we would do a song before preaching. We would introduce a song that actually correlated with the word of that day. So that's another way to, there's a series, we're tying in the song with that series
Yeah,
as
definitely.
well.
Yeah, and I think also going into that also as well is having a consistent thought process as far as introducing the new
Right.
song, because
Yeah.
it can be very discouraging when you start a new song or you introduce a new song,
Yeah.
and maybe the first time it's just crickets, right? Because again, it's new, and
Right.
if it's something that's maybe not a popular song that they hear on the radio or
Mm-hmm.
hear on Spotify or Apple playlist, they might not know it as well, right?
Right.
But I think if you take a strategic approach in introducing a song within that quarter, let's say for instance, maybe you're going to try it at least 3 or 4 times, maybe at least twice in 1 month, and you can see, sometimes congregations and just the attendance level at churches are
Right.
always different. Depending on if there's a lot of people one Sunday versus another Sunday, there could be so many factors, holidays and summertime and
Right.
vacations and
Yeah.
things like that, right? So not to give up on a new song,
Yeah.
because you only played it once and it didn't really hit, or you don't see as much as engagement. Being strategic and maybe trying to add that song another time, maybe to the top and the bottom of the month,
Right.
or at least 2 or 3 more times within that quarter to see, hey, is the church really engaging in the song, or is it just missing and they're not catching on to it because it's either too wordy, or there's not that style of the music, or
Right.
it's just not working for the congregation.
Right. And I think another good thing is like also don't rush it too. Like if you introduce one new song, try not to do 2 or 3 new songs in that same set.
Yeah,
if
the
you
same set is-
so introduce it slowly, like because they're still learning, like you said, and it could be maybe that Sunday was just too much new, and they actually really did like all the songs, but it was just too overwhelming as far as they couldn't focus on their engaging with God. They were trying to engage the words on the screen because they couldn't, follow along.
Yeah, definitely. And again, not only strategically within how many or the frequency within the month, but strategically placing that song
Yep.
next to a song
Right.
that is familiar,
Right.
or a song that is works with the theme or is consistent, that that the church can engage in, so that if it does drop off, you're not stuck, and you as a worship leader, you're panicking. You're like, okay, well, let's transition. If we have to get out of this song quickly,
Right,
let's
yeah.
transition to this next song, and let's try to re-enter in and try to get the whole church back on the same page as
Right.
far as that, and then evaluate, see like, hey, maybe we didn't play the song strongly enough, maybe we weren't engaging as much as
Maybe
we're
we need
trying
to practice
introduce
it more.
Yeah, maybe as a worship team you need to practice the song more, so we tighten it up better, and then the second time around,
Right.
Maybe the church will get more involved in
Right, definitely. I think another thing we can do is try to teach a song. It may not, you're not going on stage like, okay, guys, this is the words and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be more of like, all right, church, this is going to be a new song, but if mostly for praise, I would say this is what I would do. Like, this is the chorus. It goes like, here are the words, this can be our anthem. This can be our cry out today, whatever you're praying over, depending on the lyrics of the song. It can be a declaration. So again, in that spirit, that spirit-led way of worship, try to kind of teach the words beforehand, because mostly the chorus, I would say, because then they can focus on that engagement, like we're talking about, that with engagement with God primarily than the words.
Exactly. Even like really getting specific on the lyrics itself. Maybe understanding the backstory, if it's talking about even the 99 for 1. Okay, but what does that mean?
Right.
When that song came out, if you're a person that maybe not have been saved coming into the service, like you don't understand these
Right, exactly.
biblical contexts. But if you introduce that song, and even if it's not a new song, right? But you have these songs that have these tight biblical concepts, just taking 30 seconds and explaining, hey, we're gonna sing this next song, and in the song it's talking about this, and this is what the Bible says about
Exactly.
it, and this is why we're declaring the song over our lives and over our congregation.
Exactly.
I think that helps further engage and remind people, because sometimes, Sunday after Sunday, you can get into this repetitive pattern of like, okay, this church does 3 songs and there's a prayer, there's a sermon, there's a prayer, then God, right?
It definitely
but taking that moment to be like, hey, listen, let's actually evaluate why we're here and what we're doing and why we're singing these songs, I think really does help as far as engagement and having people just realign themselves and center on what God's doing.
Yeah, and connecting that worship to his word, I feel like is really impactful too.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. And that's how you should do it, right? Because it's not like about, what's the most popular songs and like, what are, the top 10 on Spotify or Apple. It's about what really is engaging in the heart of the culture of your church.
Exactly.
And then also the spirit where your pastor and that leadership is really looking to bring this church, whether it's the new or next level that they're trying to get to.
I think you touched on a good point too. It's like you're not trying to you cultivate you curate this playlist, but again, it's specific to your church. You're not going to try to do what you think is cool or what you think is going to be the best song out there. It's specific to your church. So we did a lot of different songs, but we used to say we gospelized it, or we like put our freedom touch to it, because it had the words and the lyrics, but the music, we were very like kind of gospel centered. So doing things differently also engaged the church. So if it wasn't so standard, again, we tried to do a lot of diverse things, but the way the music is too, I think also affects how the church engages with that new song as well.
Yeah, understanding the cultures that your church is part of, and the backgrounds that, all of your congregants, maybe not, again, doing a new song, but not just catering to the younger generation that might enjoy the new song, but doing a new song that engages all of the generations that are in your church.
100%.
That is definitely important. So yeah, to recap, in terms of introing a song, make sure you take time to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
Don't give up on it, just yet. If it doesn't work the first time, reevaluate, see maybe how you could have made it better as a team, and try it again at least a couple more times within the quarter.
Try to introduce it pre-service, post-service, in that playlist, maybe midweek service or offering.
And then take that time, especially as a worship leader, to explain the song. It's okay. We're not asking, or we're not encouraging to do a 5-minute sermonette because you don't want to overstep what your pastor is doing or has for your congregation, but taking 30 seconds to explain the song. I think or we've seen that churches and our congregations appreciate that versus going into a song and having no idea what it means or the background on it, right? So I think that's just guys. Some advice that we have, and hopefully it works out for you and your church. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care.